Hello, I'm JW, and this time I'm going to be putting that bandsaw back together. Now I've painted all of the actual outer casing, and as you can see here the colour of choice was dark green, and if you correctly guess the dark green colour, then your prize is absolutely nothing, because no prize was actually offered for that. So it's all been painted up there. This was the particular paint in question, if you're interested, and there was some primer underneath that. But anyway, it's all been painted up and covered up reasonably well. And of course, do remember to do the small bit for the side clamp as well. Now, 99% of these parts are still going to be reused, so you don't have to really replace a great deal, although there are a couple of minor items which we'll be replacing or changing as we go. Now, this piece here is the base, which was previously riveted through the holes here onto the main frame or the casting there. And you might recall in the previous video it did seem to be a bit wonky when it was standing there, and that's because a couple of the rivets had actually worked loose. So although the base was fine, the top bit wasn't fully attached, so just drilled those out and of course detached it. That made it much easier for painting anyhow. So we'll need to reattach that obviously with some screws or something, as we don't have any rivets here. Now I'd say most of the parts are going to be reusing. I've actually cleaned the table here, so considerably smoother finish on that now. That's probably some sort of residue or paint or something stuck all over the top, so that cleaned up fairly well. And I've got a new plug here for the mains lead, and we're going to be replacing the mains lead as well. The other one, there's nothing desperately wrong with it, but seeing as we've got it all apart, it's a bit stupid not to replace that. The old switch is fine, so just got some new connectors here. I'm going to use an actual ring there for the earth connection rather than just twisting the wires around. Pretty much all the rest of this is as it was supplied, so just going to be basically reusing all of these. The feet as well are perfectly fine, they cleaned up pretty well, so no problem with those. And I did also manage to remove the original label, which was originally glued onto the face, so we can glue that back on when we're finished. Now the first thing we need to do is to reattach the base plate here to the main frame and also put the rubber feet back in. So we'll start off with the rubber feet here. These are just to screw into the actual rubber material directly. So just simply the two parts there. And we'll do this before putting the top on, so it's basically just the screw through the top here, and then the foot itself goes on the other side. So that's fairly straightforward. So that's the 4 feet just fixed back in there, just little rubber things there, and of course on the table just sits down with a small clearance underneath. Now the next thing is to reattach the main casting here to that base, and originally it had rivets through the 4 holes here in the base, but I had to drill it out because they unfortunately were loose. So what we need to do is just put some screws through those holes, and again we're doing it this way around, so the motor's on this side of course with the actual mounting points here, so just drop those through. And for that I've got some new ones here, just these are 4mm, which just happen to fit through the holes we have. Locking nut at the end there, and then a little washer and whatever to go on the bottom. So this is the underside, so just got the screw going through, flat washer there, and a spring washer underneath, and then the nut over the top. This is actually a locking nut, but I've put a spring washer under it anyhow, just because we don't want this obviously coming loose. So then we'll just tighten up here with the nut thing on this side. And of course the others on this side, and then the other 2 on the bottom will be exactly the same. So that's the base reattached. So now the thing can actually stand up under its own weight, as it were. And so it's just it's chromed or shiny screw head showing through on the top there. May put some paint on those when finished. Now the next thing I want to do is put the motor back in, as that's by far the largest part. So that just comes through the hole here, and then the slot screw here, and then the fixed one at the top. And the 2 screws here, again the original ones with just the single flat washer and a locking washer, which was for the sliding one at the bottom there, so obviously adjust the tension of the belt. So plain one at the top, and plain with the lock washer on the bottom. Now here's the motor, I've painted that as well. This end, as you see, there's a bit of the original gold showing. We have to cover this with tape, mainly because this end is fairly exposed. You actually got the windings, things directly inside, so we don't particularly want paint on those, but this is going to be hidden anyhow because it's going to be against this plate here. Other end, again, just painted that. There's just a plastic fan in that end, so again, not a particular problem. A little bit's got on the inside there, but again, that's not a major problem with that. So this goes in from the other side, and again we've got the wires here which go through the actual grommet hole. So of course we need to put the rubber grommet in. This is actually the original one because it turns out this is an imperial sized hole, 3/4 inch, and most grommets now are metric, so as there's nothing inherently wrong with that, we'll just keep that one. This panel is also fairly thick, being cast aluminium, so again it would have been not impossible to get a new grommet, but certainly easier just to reuse the one we have. So again that just fits in there like that. And we're also going to put our new mains lead through there. This again is new flex here, so just to unroll a suitable length of that. And we want to put this in before the motor because of course it's much easier to get at the actual hole here before the motor goes in, so we'll just shove that through the hole there, and this will connect to the switch box which goes on the side over here. So for the moment we'll just pull the length of this through and just put a knot in the end there so it doesn't pull away through that. And then the motor, again these wires will just thread through that grommet, and then I've got our screws to secure through the panel, fixing it in position. Now here's the actual motor, and say the wire just goes through that hole with the mains lead, and here's the top screw just put through from the other side. The bottom one is just directly below, and it actually goes into these threaded holes on the motor here and over here. So first of all I want to get this one into the top here, just near to where the actual cable comes out, and then once that's in place it will obviously swing, then we can get the one in the bottom through the threaded hole here. So a bit of faffing to get that sort of lined up and tightened, but nevertheless fairly easy once it's all lined up and in position. Now before screwing the motor on, what we're going to do is put this little flex grip piece in position, and this basically just goes on here. So it just clamps down the flex into the two holes. It is possible to get out with the motor there, but the screw on this side is very difficult to get at unless you're going in at an angle. So just install this over the flex there to secure it in position. So that's the flex grip there, just basically to stop it being pulled out of the hole at the top. So that's the top motor fixing in place, and you see that thing, you can theoretically get in there, but a bit of a stupid angle to go in, so easier to do that before the motor is in position. Now on this side, again that's our mains lead there and the motor. I'll put the electricals on in a minute, and then this piece here with the lock washer on the back just needs to go through the slot, and that will go into the other motor fixing, which is about there, and that gives you the adjustment for the tension of the belt. We put that in later, so we'll just put that in there, but leave it loose for the moment so we get the adjustment on there. So the next thing is the electrical connection, and we're just going to reuse the original switch because it still works perfectly well, no particular problem with that. And also, so we could put one of those sort of emergency stop things, but this is a very tiny machine. The actual risks in using it are incredibly small. So this has various components here. This is the black plastic housing which just basically covers over the hole here and the various connections, which goes in the top. So the switch is working perfectly, so there's no need to replace it, but if we did, it's just one of these snap-in things that just press it in and the tabs lock it into position in the switch housing. Now the motor here already has these spade tabs on from when we removed it previously, but of course we're going to need some new ones for the mains lead. So we've got a couple here, just the sort of crimp-on type things there, and also a ring terminal which we used for the earth connection, which is on the stud here. Previously it was just sort of wire twisted round, but got the terminal, so we may as well use it. And then we've got little washers and things, or nuts to go on the top of that. So here's our earth terminal, and just strip the wire. That just needs to press over the top, so we need to just trim that down to a suitable length. And just place that into the terminal. And ideally we just want the wire just to be visible at the end here. We don't want it sort of pulling out the end and getting all tangled up there. And then we'll just crimp this down with the appropriate fixing here, which will be the red one obviously in this case. So this now can go over the terminal here. So there's a loose sort of brass cup there which goes over first. Then the ring terminal. Then we have a washer here, also seems to be some sort of brassy material. And then our nut goes, of course, over the top of that. And just tighten it down fully with the ratchet type thing like that. So that's the earth connection, and then we need to attach two of the sort of spade type things to the ends of the two conductors here. So we'll just trim away those damaged ends. Just strip both of the conductors there. So again, we'll just crimp these onto the ends of the wires. Now this actually goes on here this way up, so the switch is upwards. So what we'll do first is just to pass the wires through the hole, and then we can attach the switch here, which obviously just goes in the top. Now previously it was actually this way around with the terminals towards the bottom, so we'll again keep it in that arrangement there. Essentially it's just a 2-pole switch, so it's this is sort of one pole here and this is the other pole over there. And again just use pliers to push those down fully. So that's the switch wiring there. So basically line on one side, neutral of course on the other. And then this whole actual switch will then be able to snap into the hole on the black housing here. So just pushing that through the hole. And then it will just snap into the housing like that, and then we can see the connections down inside. And then this will actually just fix over the top of here, screw at the top and at the bottom. And the screws in question are these short ones, just two there directly into the casting of the aluminium. So switch installed there, and of course we'll be testing it electrically later, and the motor coming through like that, so again no problem with that. Now the next thing we do is put some of these wheels back in place. Now there's two types of wheels. This one with the holes in is the one that goes here for the belt. It's got this sort of lip around the edge as you can see there. And then the other type is solid, and that's the one that goes here and also up at the top there. Those are basically interchangeable. Now for these we require this, basically the spindle piece and a washer, and the deal is that this goes through the centre, washer goes on the back, and then this just threads into the hole in the casting. Now before I put this in, I'm just going to put a bit of grease onto the actual metal part here. This is just some black general purpose grease I have to have around. This, in fact. So we'll just put a bit of a coating on that. And these words go with the raised dome piece on this side, so the recess is basically against the frame, so we'll just shovel that through the middle. Washer on the back there, so we'll put a little spot of grease under the edge of that as well. And then washer over the top, and the grease will actually help to hold the washer in place as well, so fairly helpful. And then just a matter of screwing the thing into the frame there. Should just tighten it down, and then the thing itself should still rotate, of course, around that central spindle without the middle coming undone. And notice the normal operation mode is this direction, so it's actually working to actually tighten up the screw in the middle, rather than if it was that way it could of course unscrew itself. So that seems to rotate there perfectly fine. And for this one, again, it's pretty much more the same, and the only thing to make sure again is that the domed bit is on the outside, so the recess is in the back. This has this lip here which is wider on the back than the front, so it's much easier to get the belt in and out. So again, it's the same deal, one of these things here, bit of grease to go on there. And we're using for grease this disgusting screwdriver. It's one of these horrendous neon jobs which nobody commented on in the previous video, but nevertheless we're not using it for its intended purpose because it's only good for basically poking at things and daubing grease where necessary. So again, we'll just shove that through the centre of there. And as before, there'll be a washer on the back, which is one of these things, so yeah, just put a bit of grease on the back of there to hold the washer in place. And as before, it just screws into the threaded part in the back of the frame. And again, we can tighten that up to a reasonable level, but the thing itself, of course, will still rotate easily once we've tightened up the middle. Now, the next thing is the belt. Now, I've actually got two belts here because this is the old belt and this is the new one. Now, these are only a couple of pounds, and this particular one is quite readily available. It's a fairly standard size. It is an imperial size, but it's basically, as it says on the side here, 210 XL. There is another number which I'll just stick on the screen there. So although the old belt was actually reasonably okay, it did have a bit of a ridge because where the blade has been riding against it. Literally only a couple of pounds, so false economy not to replace. So that goes around there with the teeth on the inside, and then we should be able to move the motor here to get the blade, or the belt rather, over the tooth of the cog. And then it will tighten up, of course, as we move that way, and of course that's what will drive the thing around like that. So we'll just tighten it up for a moment in that position. So we can adjust this later, of course, but for the moment it's just getting the stuff put back together. And now for the third wheel, which of course is at the top. The actual wheel is the same. It's got this sort of recess here and the raised bit, so again it goes this way with the raised piece outwards, but this does not screw directly in here. What we've got is this piece here, which is essentially the tilt and slide mechanism. Now this has a variety of components. This is the tilt bit here, and this is what the wheel actually is threaded into. So essentially the wheel threads into this hole, this goes through the frame into the slot here, and that's what gives you your vertical adjustment. And then this knob on the top just threads in, and that's basically put a bit of tension to, when it slides up and down, hold it in the required position. So I'll just remove that knob temporarily. Now this is what it originally screwed in with, and it's basically just a hexagonal headed screw which goes in the hexagonal hole in the middle. And we've got a washer and then this nut which go on the other side. Now this nut is a locking variety of the old type with the extra bit sort of tack welded on top, but it's a bit knackered and it's been threaded all the way through, so not ideal. But what we do have is a new one. This is a 6mm thread, so I haven't have these anyway, so I've got a new nut here with a blue nylon locking insert, so we'll use that, and again we'll use the original washer, nothing wrong with that. So bolt goes in the, or screw into the hexagonal recess. This pit is downwards, and then this will go through the hole that's in the slot here, and then it's just the nut and the washer go on the back, so it just holds like that, and then this is what will actually slide up and down in this fashion. Now because it slides on the metal, what we'll do is just put some of the grease on those surfaces. So a bit of grease there, that will go through, and then we'll just put our nut and washer, of course, on the back. And then that should be free to slide up and down in a more civilised fashion. So previously it was actually jammed in one position because someone had grossly over tightened the nut on the back. Now the other part is the knob here, which goes in from the top, and essentially it's just the knob with the longer threaded spindle. Just a washer, and it actually has 2 washers on this for whatever reason, but we'll keep with the original design. And the little spring goes over the top, and then this actually goes in the top here through the top of there, and then it threads into the top of that piece inside. And of course the idea being that as you tighten the knob it will pull this up, and that gives you your blade tension as it moves up and down. And on the back here you can see that's the slot there where the thing actually moves, so as you adjust the knob at the top it will just move up and down within the slot. Now we'll tighten this up again when we're finished, but for now we'll just put it there. So previously someone had grossly tightened this down so it was actually wedged in position, and of course didn't do anything. Now the final part is this other knob, which is the short one, and again has a spring on there as well. This did not have a washer in it, but I'm going to put a washer just over there behind the spring, so again gives it a bit of extra something to ride on rather than having the spring gouging into the plastic. And this actually goes in the side here, and this is a threaded hole that we've got there, and that goes through. So this is the tilt thing. Basically this threads through from the back there, so as we undo it, it goes in and it will come through, and then it presses against this piece here, so as you tighten it through it just pivots this at an angle to whatever you would like. So that's now in position, and then of course the fun thing is just the wheel itself, which is the same as with the others. So again it's the little spindle there, so we'll again put some grease onto there. Dome side outwards, and again that will just slot through the middle. Just a spodge of grease on the back. And as before, the washer just sits over the back of that. So it presses there, and then this just threads into the actual pivoting part here rather than the frame itself. And as before, we can tighten that down to a decent level, because of course the thing will still pivot around the actual central part even though it's fully tightened. And now we can see the tilt a bit more clearly, so you've actually got this sort of movement vertically like that. So as you tighten the knob at the back it pushes the bottom out, and as you loosen it it will allow it to go in to get the proper angle for the blade. And then our height adjustment here will be the tension, so as we move it down you see the wheel will drop down almost to the bottom of the casting there, and then as we tighten it up basically it pulls the wheel up, so then you've got the tension on the blade. So that's our 3 wheels in place, and just remove any excess grease from the front here. Now, someone in the previous video did say they thought this was 3D filament, but they of course then realised that it wasn't. But no, this is just wire in various colours, copper core, stranded, rated for all kinds of stuff, and basically it's 0.75 square millimetre 20 AWG. So no, it's not 3D filament. We don't have any 3D printing crap around here. 3D printing is far too expensive and takes far too long to get nowhere, so we won't be having any of that. So that's fine there. So that belt will obviously drive this bottom wheel. Blade rests upon here, goes around there, around here, and then of course back down to the bottom. So now we have some smaller parts to install. This is the metal bracket which holds the lower guides. The guides go into the slot at the top here. And this has two fixings here. First of all, we've got this small screw here with a washer, and that just goes in the top here. Just threads in here. And then at the bottom we have this wheel or handle which goes over this threaded rod, and the rod actually goes into the bottom piece here. So we'll install the threaded piece first, and these have a screw thread on both ends with a blank in the middle, and it's the idea that this will screw into the base frame. Now this washer is got paint on it, and it's also a bit corroded, so we'll just replace that with a new shiny one. These washers and things were not purchased specifically for this, we just have a supply of various sizes anyway. Of course you could go and buy them if you don't have them, but it's useful to have a supply of various sizes and things in stock, as of course many things do require them. So we'll tighten this one up into the frame here. And then the wheel just goes again over the top of that. The idea being that this is left reasonably tight, but not so tight that you can't actually move it. So a bit of movement in that. And then you can obviously adjust the height of this and then just tighten down the lower one to lock that into position. Now on the side here we've got this piece which fixes the table, and it's a similar sort of arrangement. We've got the threaded piece here which screws into there, and then we've got this sort of wing nut which goes over the top, again with a washer underneath. And there's two of those, one here, both the same. So as before, we'll just start by screwing in these two threaded parts. Now I'll just tighten those in. Next thing we have is this disc here which goes in there, and this is basically a stop for when the table is flat. It's basically what the table rests against when you've got your zero angle, as it were. And again, it's just a single screw that just goes into the threaded hole on the side of the casting. That was sort of approximately the general area. And then the only other thing here is this piece here which has this little pointer which is supposed to indicate on the scale where the thing is actually positioned. Now, if you remember in the previous video I said it was rather loose, so we'll place a little washer behind that. And then we'll just screw that in. There's supposed to be a posi drive screw head for whatever reason. So again, we'll just tighten that in there, and then we can adjust the pointer when we get the table in place, and then that will actually lock down now because of the little washer behind. So we'll just leave that slightly loose for the moment. And the fun thing on this side is got these little threaded holes here, which is essentially the back of where the wheels go, and got these little plastic pieces which we removed previously, and they will just press fit into the two holes. And again, there's another one over this side to match behind the wheel over there. So that's that. And then we've got another one of these threaded deals here. So again, all exactly the same. This one goes in here at the top, and this is what holds on both the upper guides and also the guard for the blade as well. So as with the others, we'll just screw that into the top. So that's in there. Now this is the blade actual hold over the two slots there, and also this is sort of the guard which covers over the blade as well. And the deal with this one, this goes in the slot here, the sort of hexagonal bar type thing that goes up inside, and then we've got a piece that clamps over the front, basically this thing, which goes in like that. And then on the front of there we have the washer and another one of these black knobs which just tightens over that to hold the whole thing in position. So that basically goes up there like that, and then to adjust it's just loosening this, and then that will slide vertically in the slot. Now I'm actually just going to remove that for a moment, because we don't want this to obviously bind in here and destroy the paint. So some silicone spray here, and we'll just put some on the threaded rod there and in the gap. And also on the back of this is not actually painted on the back, but give it a good coating. Bear in mind this is a sort of thing that's going to have to be adjusted fairly often, so we want that to have a bit of slip in the side there. But of course not so much that it slips down and falls out. So I'll just put that on, put the knob in position, so that will be able to clamp in place, but obviously it hopefully won't stick and jam onto the paintwork. Now what's left now are the guides here for the blades, and I've got two sorts here. So one with a plastic roller and then the other one with a metal piece with a groove, and the idea is that this goes behind the blade with the metal groove, and then the plastic one goes in front. And we've got these sort of bits of fibre, and someone in the comments did actually say what these are for, and essentially it's to put oil on there so it keeps it lubricated. So that was certainly helpful to know that. They did clean up reasonably well. They looked a bit disgusting in the other video because they were sort of caked with ancient old grease and goodness knows what, but nevertheless they cleaned up okay. Not necessarily the best guide arrangement in the world, but it's what we have, so it's what we're going to be using for the moment. I mean, theoretically you could amend these to fit a different style in, but so it doesn't hugely matter in this case. We'll just use what we have for the moment, bearing in mind that's what it was supplied with. So that's the rear guide, and the centre of the blade goes in that groove, and that's free to rotate. And then on the front here it's just this basically plastic roller, which again just rolls there so the thing can obviously just go between the two. Lower guards are exactly the same, so that's the guides sort of roughly positioned there. So metal one at the back with the groove and the roller on the front, and again the same on the top here. And again this can adjust for the height depending on where the table is, and of course the top piece here as well adjusts up and down as desired. And speaking of the table, that's pretty much the only part that's left. So here is the table obviously, and underneath here, so it's got this single piece which just goes on those two bits there, so the two pegs just come through the actual curved section, and then it rests on top of this disc here. So just test fit up there, that seems reasonable. And we'll just spray this with some of the silicone so it doesn't bind onto the various bits of the paintwork. And then underneath the table, again, it's just two washers and the two wing nuts over the top. So washer there, and the nut over the top of that. And just square that up a bit. So in theory you can tilt this, but fairly likely we're going to be just using it on the flat, as it were. And then that just leaves a little pointer here underneath, which obviously needs to just indicate allegedly which angle you've selected. So if we just tighten that up so it points in the upright position. So not a just really accurate piece of thing, but doesn't really matter as we're most likely using it flat anyhow. Little insert piece there, just red plastic, and that just presses into the top there. This one obviously has got a bit of wear, but it's a fairly disposable item anyhow. It's just obviously gets cut as the blade goes through, but obviously change that as and when necessary. And I've got a new plug here. The other one again was okay, but it didn't have the sleeved pin, so allegedly you're not supposed to use those anymore. But the reality is that not going to make a huge difference unless you're going to be stupid enough to put it halfway in the socket and then deliberately poke your fingers around the back. But we'll put the new plug on anyhow, as we've obviously got one, so we may as well make use of it. So just wide up the plug, and that's what the inside should look like. So of course your wire's in the correct place, so line brown over there, neutral on this side in blue, earth at the top in the green and yellow. Notice the green and yellow is longer than the others, so if this was to be ripped out it would remain connected before the others, or after the others obviously pulled through. 3 amp fuse in this case, that should be plenty for this motor. It may have a bit of a surge on switch on, but these fuses are normally pretty good at dealing with that. And if it doesn't, then we'll just change it to a 5 amp at a later time. So that's the inside there, so I'll just put the lid on, which is this orange coloured thing for whatever reason. This is supposed to be one of these more durable types, so if you drop on the floor it doesn't shatter into thousands of pieces, which is a problem with the other hard plastic varieties. So put that on there, and the only thing then is just to test this before we plug it in, just to make sure we haven't made a horrible mistake or shorted out the wires to the case or something. And we'll just remove this label on the top that says fitted with 13 amp fuse, because obviously it isn't anymore. So we'll hack that off, and notice it leaves a disgusting mess on the lid, which will probably be there forever. Now back inside, because the testing equipment's in here and it's not convenient to dismantle all this to take it away. So what we need to do now is just confirm that we've wired it correctly, as in the earth pin here is connected to the metal frame, and we haven't got any shorts or issues between the earth and the line and neutral. And we use this machine here, if I've seen this in other videos, so we'll plug in here, and then we need to attach this flexible lead here just to a metal part of the machine. The table is just as good, and we use the class 1 test here, which basically puts 1250 volts between earth and the line and neutral to make sure there's no issues with the insulation, and it also measures the resistance of the earth, as in the wire here, back through to the metal, and we should see in this case it's 0.1 or less. There's also 0.5, but it should only have a very short lead, so we should be able to get the 0.1 on this one fairly easily, although in theory so it could go up to 0.5 as it's a fairly fixed piece of equipment. So we'll press the button and we should see this less than 0.1, and the green light's here, assuming it's actually going to pass. Yeah, well that's fine. As you see, the things are well below 0.1 and both green lights are on. And we'll try the switch in the other position, because I believe that was in the off position, so obviously it was only testing the wire, not the actual motor. So same again, and unsurprisingly it's the same result. So that's a pass, and we can also use this button here to apply power to it to see if it actually runs. Now there's no blade in this of course, but of course we want to see if the motor does work, so I believe that's the on position. Yep. So that runs, and little red switch of course illuminated down here. Current wise it's sort of in the region of 2.5 amps or so. So that 3 amp fuse should be fine. I mean, there's obviously a slight surge when it initially starts, but It's a pretty small motor, so 3 amp fuse should be fine. Now that's it for this time. Basically got the thing reassembled. Obviously the motor works and all the various components are put back where they should go. And next time we'll obviously put a blade in and look at setting it up and getting the tension right and the guides adjusted, and obviously see if the thing actually cuts something, which obviously was the whole point of it in the first place. And so I'll do that in a separate video because some people might just want to see that part rather than the complete reassembly of it. So that will be coming up fairly shortly, and until then, thanks for watching.